Welcome to Night Shift Pulse. Comment your city and the time below. The night connects us all. If you enjoy what you hear, please subscribe. Let's step into the dark. Story 1. Unit 12 never reached the hospital. The dispatch recording is clear. My voice confirms patient loaded, doors sealed, en route to St. Catherine's. The GPS log shows continuous movement along Highway 47, no stops, no deviations. But according to the hospital's receiving desk, Unit 12 never arrived that night. My partner, Derek Hollis, insists we completed the transport. He remembers rolling the gurney through the bay doors. I remember none of it. I had been a paramedic for 9 years when this happened. Most of that time spent with the county's Northern Division, covering rural routes between small townships and the larger medical centers. The work was steady, predictable: cardiac events, farm accidents, overdoses in trailer parks off Route 19. You develop a rhythm with your partner, a procedural autopilot that carries you through 12-hour shifts without much conscious thought. Derek and I had worked together for 3 years by then. He was methodical, never rushed, the kind of paramedic who triple-checked medication dosages even when the patient was stable. We complemented each other well. I handled navigation and communication. He managed patient care and documentation. It was a division of labor that had never failed us. The call came in at 9:47 p.m. on a Wednesday in late October. Dispatch reported a 63-year-old male, chest pain, moderate distress, residential address on Maple Grove Road. Standard cardiac protocol. We acknowledged and rolled within 2 minutes, which was typical for our station. Maple Grove Road was a winding stretch of asphalt that cut through farmland about 20 minutes from our base. Older homes, widely spaced, most with long gravel driveways. We had been there before, though I could not recall the specific address. The GPS guided us without issue. The house appeared as expected: single-story ranch, porch light on, a sedan parked near the mailbox. The patient was seated in a recliner when we entered. His wife stood nearby, hands clasped, visibly anxious but cooperative. The man was pale, diaphoretic, clutching his left arm. Classic presentation. Derek began the assessment while I prepared the gurney and called in our status to dispatch. Vitals were concerning but stable enough for transport. No need for advanced interventions on scene. We loaded him without incident. His wife elected not to ride along, said she would drive herself and meet us there. Derek reassured her, gave an estimated arrival time of 35 minutes, and we departed at 10:14 p.m. The drive to St. Catherine's was uneventful. I took Highway 47, the most direct route, a road I had traveled hundreds of times. It was a clear night, minimal traffic, no construction delays. Derek monitored the patient in the back, updating me periodically through the interior partition. Vitals holding, patient responsive, IV established, everything proceeding as it should. I remember the road. I remember the dashboard glow, the faint static of the radio between transmissions, the mile markers passing in steady intervals. I remember glancing at the clock: 10:32 p.m., 10:41 p.m., 10:50 p.m. I remember the exit for St. Catherine's approaching, the familiar turn onto Medical Plaza Drive. But I do not remember arriving. The next memory I have is Derek opening the passenger door and saying, "We're clear to head back." I was still in the driver's seat, engine idling. The ambulance was parked at the station, bay doors open behind us. I looked at the clock, 11:18 p.m. I asked him what happened. He looked confused. "What do you mean?" I gestured vaguely. "I don't remember getting back." He shrugged. "Long shift. You zoned out on the return drive. Happens." It did happen occasionally. Autopilot could carry you through familiar routes while your mind wandered. But I had no memory of the hospital either. No memory of the patient handoff, the paperwork, the bay entrance. Nothing between the highway and this moment. I let it go. Fatigue was a plausible explanation. We restocked the rig, logged the call, and finished the shift without further incident. The next morning, I received a call from our dispatch supervisor, Linda Pruitt. She asked if I could come in to clarify some details about the previous night's transport. I assumed it was a routine quality assurance review. I arrived at the station just after noon. Linda was seated at her desk, a printed dispatch log in front of her. She did not look pleased. "Walk me through last night's call," she said. I recounted it. The dispatch time, the patient presentation, the transport, the return. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she turned the log toward me. "St. Catherine's has no record of receiving your patient." I stared at the page. "That's not possible." "We transported him. Their receiving log shows no ambulance arrival between 10 p.m. and midnight. No patient matching that description admitted through emergency. No documentation signed by you or Derek." I felt a strange displacement, like the ground had shifted slightly beneath me. "There has to be a clerical error. We were there. Derek handed off care to the ER staff." Linda tapped her pen against the desk. "Derek says the same thing. He remembers the handoff clearly. Describes the nurse who took the report, the bed assignment, even the attending physician's name. But the hospital has no record of any of it." "Did you call the patient's wife?" "We tried the contact number from the dispatch. It's disconnected. We sent a unit back to the address on Maple Grove Road." She paused. "The house is vacant. Has been for 2 years, according to the county records." I opened my mouth, then closed it. There was no response that made sense. Linda continued, her tone careful. "GPS tracking shows your unit traveling the correct route. Continuous movement, no stops except at the patient's address and the station. The timeline matches a standard transport, but there's no hospital entry, no gate log, no security footage, no electronic signature on the patient transfer." "What about the patient?" I asked quietly. "No 911 call logged to that address. No record of the initial dispatch beyond our own system." I sat back, trying to process. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know what happened. Your report is consistent. Derek's is consistent. The GPS is consistent, but the outcome doesn't exist." I met with Derek that afternoon. He was defensive, almost irritated by the implication that something had gone wrong. He described the hospital arrival in detail. The bay doors opening, the receiving nurse named Allison with short blonde hair, the patient transferred to bed 7 in the cardiac wing, vitals stable at handoff. He remembered signing the electronic tablet, remembered the attending asking about onset time. But none of it had been recorded. We reviewed the in-cab footage together, footage automatically captured during every call. The video showed exactly what I remembered. The drive along Highway 47. Derek's periodic updates from the patient compartment. My hands steady on the wheel. The timestamp advanced normally. 10:14 p.m. departure. 10:51 p.m. The exit for Medical Plaza Drive approaching. And then, the video cut. Not static, not corruption. Just a seamless jump from 10:51 p.m. on the highway to 11:18 p.m. at the station. Engine idling, Derek opening the door. No transition, no missing time indicator. Just an edit so smooth it looked intentional. Derek stared at the screen. "That's not possible." I rewound it, watched again. The same jump. "Maybe the system glitched," he offered, but his voice lacked conviction. I checked the ambulance's maintenance log. No reported electrical issues, no camera malfunctions. The unit had been in service for 4 years, reliable, recently inspected. Over the following days, I tried to reconstruct the missing time through other means. I contacted St. Catherine's directly, spoke to the night shift supervisor, described the patient. She searched the records personally, no admissions matching the details. I asked about the nurse Derek described. No one named Allison worked in their emergency department. I drove the route again, alone, during the same time of night. Highway 47 to Medical Plaza Drive, through the hospital entrance past the emergency bay. Everything was exactly as I remembered it, familiar, concrete. But I could not recall actually being there that night. Derek began to avoid the subject. When I brought it up, he became terse, insisted his memory was clear and the hospital had simply lost the records. He refused to watch the footage again. Within a week, he requested a transfer to a different shift, citing personal reasons. Linda approved it without question. I remained on the Northern Division, partnered with a new medic, a recent graduate named Travis. He was competent, eager, unaware of what had happened. We ran calls without issue. Life continued, but I began to notice something. Unit 12, the ambulance I had driven that night, was scheduled out of rotation for maintenance shortly after the incident. Standard procedure, nothing unusual. When it returned to service 2 weeks later, I was assigned to it again. The first call was routine. A fall with possible fracture, elderly patient, short transport to County General. Everything proceeded normally. But when I checked the GPS log afterward, I noticed a slight discrepancy in the timeline. A gap of 4 minutes between departure and arrival, unaccounted for in the recorded route. I mentioned it to Travis. He shrugged it off as a GPS lag common in rural areas with poor signal. The second call, a week later, respiratory distress, nursing home transfer. Another gap, 6 minutes this time. I began documenting every call in a personal notebook, comparing my written timestamps to the electronic logs. The discrepancies grew, sometimes minutes. Once, nearly 15 minutes vanished between dispatch and hospital arrival, though I remembered the drive as continuous and uninterrupted. Travis never noticed, or if he did, he never mentioned it. I requested a different unit. Linda denied the request, said staffing was tight and Unit 12 was reliable. She suggested I take a few days off, get some rest, hinted that the stress of the unsolved incident might be affecting me. I took the days. They did not help. When I returned, I decided to test something. On the next transport, I set my personal phone to record audio continuously, placed it in my shirt pocket. If there were gaps in time, perhaps the audio would capture something the official systems missed. The call came on a Thursday night. Minor vehicle accident, single occupant, possible concussion. We transported to St. Catherine's, the same hospital. I watched the route carefully, noted every turn, every landmark. Travis managed the patient. I focused on the road. The drive felt normal. 28 minutes door to door. When I reviewed the audio later that night, my hands began to shake. The recording ran for 41 minutes. But 13 of those minutes contained no sound, not silence, true absence. The waveform flatlined as if the microphone had been disabled, then resumed exactly where it should have mid-sentence. Travis updating me on patient vitals. I listened to it a dozen times, the gap always in the same place. Always during the approach to the hospital. I did not report this. I knew how it would sound. Instead, I began to watch the other units, the other crews. I noticed patterns. Certain ambulances seemed to have similar discrepancies in their logs, always small, always dismissed as technical errors. None of the other paramedics seemed concerned, or perhaps they simply did not remember. I thought about the patient from that first call. The man with chest pain, the wife who never arrived at the hospital, the house that had been vacant for years. I thought about Derek's detailed memory of a handoff that never happened, and I began to wonder if memory itself could be a form of paperwork, a record that updates automatically, filling in gaps we are not meant to notice. Last month, I submitted my resignation. Linda accepted it without asking why. My final shift ended at midnight. The ambulance parked, the bay doors closed behind me. I walked to my car, started the engine, and checked the odometer. It read 217 fewer miles than it had that morning. I have not driven since. Derek called me once a few weeks after I left. He sounded tired, uncertain. He said he had been reviewing old reports and could not find the documentation for a call he clearly remembered running. A transfer that should have been logged but was not. He asked if I ever experienced something similar. I told him I had not. He did not believe me, but he let it go. The dispatch recordings are clear. My voice confirms patient loaded, doors sealed en route. The GPS logs show continuous movement. But the hospitals do not always remember us arriving. And I have learned not to trust the routes I think I know. Some roads lead exactly where they are supposed to. Others simply lead. Story 2. The patient who knew my call sign. The patient addressed me as EMT 842 Victor before I had activated my radio. I had been assigned that call sign at the start of my shift, less than an hour prior. It was not printed on my uniform. It was not something a civilian would know. Yet the man on the gurney said it clearly, calmly, as if reading it from a list. Then he corrected my radio procedure before I made the error. The incident report auto-filled itself 3 hours later. I never touched the keyboard. I had been certified as an EMT basic for 14 months when this occurred. I worked for a private ambulance company that held contracts with several rural counties, primarily handling interfacility transfers and non-emergency calls. It was stable work, predictable, a way to gain experience before testing for paramedic certification. The company operated on a rotating call sign system, reassigned daily for radio clarity and dispatch tracking. Each EMT received a unique identifier at shift start, a 3-digit number followed by a phonetic suffix. Mine changed every day. On this particular shift, a Sunday in late March, I was assigned 842 Victor. I learned this at 6:43 a.m. during the morning briefing. The dispatcher, a woman named Carla, handed me the assignment slip along with the radio and portable monitor. I clipped the radio to my belt, confirmed the channel, and reported to my assigned unit. My partner that day was a senior EMT named Greg Brennan, a man in his mid-50s with over 20 years in emergency services. He was quiet, methodical, the type to complete every checkbox on a form before moving to the next task. Our first call came at 7:12 a.m., a non-emergency transfer from a rehabilitation center to a diagnostic imaging facility. Routine. The patient was a male in his early 70s, post-stroke stable condition requiring transport for a scheduled MRI. We arrived at the facility, received the paperwork from the nurse, and loaded the patient without complication. His name, according to the transfer sheet, was Martin Cray. He was alert, oriented, minimally verbal due to residual aphasia. The nurse briefed us quickly. No acute issues, vital stable, expected return transport in approximately 2 hours. We secured him on the gurney, confirmed comfort, and began the drive. Greg handled the patient compartment. I drove, standard division of labor. Approximately 11 minutes into the transport, I heard Greg's voice through the partition. "He's asking for you." I glanced at the rearview mirror, saw Greg leaning closer to the patient. "Tell him we'll be there in 15 minutes. "No," Greg said, his tone slightly uncertain. "He's asking for you specifically." By name. I frowned. Patients occasionally asked for the driver by role. The one driving, your partner, but rarely by name. I had not introduced myself beyond a brief greeting during loading. What did he say? I called back. Greg hesitated. He said, "Tell EMT 842 Victor to confirm his radio check." My hands tightened on the wheel. I had not performed a radio check yet. It was on my mental list, something I intended to do after clearing city traffic. But I had not mentioned it aloud, had not even keyed the radio since departing. I pulled into a gas station parking lot, put the vehicle in park, and stepped into the patient compartment. Martin Cray was watching me. His eyes were clear, focused, no sign of confusion or disorientation. His right hand rested on the gurney rail, fingers drumming lightly, almost rhythmically. "Did you need something, Mr. Cray?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, professional. He nodded once, slowly. "Your radio check. You are overdue." I glanced at Greg. He looked as unsettled as I felt. "How did you know my call sign?" I asked. Martin's expression did not change. "It is on your assignment. 842 Victor. You received it at 6:43 this morning." I had received it at 6:43. But there was no way he could have known that. The assignment slip was in my pocket. The call sign was not on my uniform, not on the ambulance, not on any document he had access to. "Who told you that?" I pressed. "No one told me." His voice was even, almost clinical. "I observed the protocol. You are required to confirm radio function within 30 minutes of shift start. You have not done so. Dispatch will mark you non-compliant." He was correct. 30 minutes had passed. I had forgotten. I stepped back into the cab, keyed the radio, and performed the check. Dispatch acknowledged. I returned to the patient compartment. "Satisfied?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Martin nodded. "Yes. You should also verify your oxygen supply before departing. The gauge is reading lower than standard." I looked at the portable oxygen unit mounted on the wall. The gauge showed 3/4 full within acceptable range. But I checked the backup tank anyway. It was nearly empty, something I should have caught during the pre-shift inspection. Greg noticed my expression. "What's going on?" "He is correct," I said quietly. "Backup tank is low." Greg stared at the patient. Martin Cray remained still, his gaze steady, unblinking. We continued the transport in silence. I drove carefully, hyper-aware of every procedure, every protocol. Martin did not speak again until we arrived at the imaging facility. As we prepared to unload, he looked directly at me and said, "Your documentation will be incomplete. You will forget to log the mileage." He was correct. I had forgotten. I logged it immediately. While Greg wheeled him inside, the return transport was scheduled for 2 hours later. Greg and I waited in the ambulance parked in the facility lot. Neither of us spoke much. Greg eventually said, "That was unusual." I agreed. When the imaging was complete, we loaded Martin again. He was unchanged, alert, calm. As we secured the gurney, he said, "You will receive a priority call in 18 minutes. Chest pain, elderly female, residential address on Crescent Hill Drive." I looked at Greg. He looked at me. "How do you know that?" I asked. "I do not know it," Martin replied. "I am reporting what will occur." 18 minutes later, the radio crackled. Dispatch requested our unit divert to a priority call. Chest pain, elderly female, residential address on Crescent Hill Drive. Greg stared at the radio, then at Martin. "How?" he whispered. Martin's expression remained neutral. "The system updates in real time. The call was already queued." "There is no system that predicts calls," I said, my voice tight. "There is always a system," Martin replied. "You are part of it." We diverted to the call. The patient was exactly as described. We transported her to County General, completed the handoff, and returned Martin to his rehabilitation facility without further incident. When we unloaded him, I asked, "Who are you?" He met my eyes. "I am Martin Cray, post-stroke patient scheduled for MRI. You transported me." "That is not what I am asking." "I know," he said softly, "but that is the only answer I am permitted to give." We left him there. The shift continued. We ran 4 more calls, all routine. But I noticed something. Every procedure I performed, every documentation task, every radio transmission, I completed them without error, without delay, as if following a script I had memorized but never read. Greg noticed it too. At one point he said, "You are unusually efficient today." I did not respond. At the end of the shift, I returned to the station and began completing the incident reports. The computer system required detailed entries for each transport: patient information, times, interventions, mileage, billing codes. I opened the report for Martin Cray's transport. The fields were already filled. Every detail, every timestamp, every procedure, documented completely, accurately. My name was listed as the reporting EMT, but I had not entered any of it. I called Carla over. "Did you complete this report?" She glanced at the screen. "No, that is your call sign. You must have entered it earlier." "I did not," she shrugged. "System autofill, maybe. It happens sometimes with repeat patients." This was not a repeat patient. She gave me a look that suggested I was overthinking it. "If it is accurate, leave it. We are behind on paperwork." I checked the other reports. The priority call, the chest pain patient, also complete, also accurate, also auto-filled. I logged out and went home. Over the following weeks, I began to notice patterns. Certain patients seemed to know details they should not. A woman being transferred for dialysis mentioned my previous call before I had logged it. A man with a fractured wrist asked if I had filed the controlled substance report, something only dispatch and supervisors should have known about. Each time the incident reports completed themselves, I tested it. On one call, I deliberately delayed documentation, left fields blank, waited to see if the system would autofill. It did. Within hours, the report appeared in the database, complete, accurate, as if I had entered it myself. I asked Greg if he experienced the same thing. He said he had not noticed. But when I checked his reports, they too were autofilled. I brought it to Carla's attention. She dismissed it as a software update, said the company had implemented new AI-assisted documentation tools to reduce administrative burden. "When was this update installed?" I asked. She checked her emails. "About 6 months ago." "Why was I not informed?" "You were. It was in the orientation materials." I had never seen orientation materials mentioning AI documentation, but when I checked my employee file, there it was. A signed acknowledgement form, dated my first day of employment, agreeing to the use of automated reporting systems. I did not remember signing it. I requested a meeting with the operations manager, a man named Paul Dietrich. He listened to my concerns politely, then explained that the system used predictive algorithms based on GPS data, radio transmissions, and standard protocols to generate reports. It was designed to improve accuracy and reduce human error. "But it is filling in details I have not provided," I said. "It extrapolates based on context. If you transported a patient from point A to point B, it assumes standard procedures were followed unless you indicate otherwise. What if I did not follow standard procedures? Then you override the autofill. Simple." I left the meeting unsatisfied. That night, I reviewed the recording of Martin Cray's transport. The ambulance was equipped with interior audio recording activated automatically during patient contact. The recording was clear. Martin's voice predicting the priority call. Greg's confusion. My questions. But there was something else. In the background, beneath our voices, I could hear a faint, rhythmic pattern. Not mechanical, not environmental. It sounded like keystrokes, rapid, continuous, as if someone were typing in real time. I isolated the audio, amplified it. The keystrokes matched the exact moments Martin spoke. I played it for Greg. He listened, his face pale. "What does that mean?" he asked. I did not answer because I did not know. But I began to suspect that Martin Cray had not been predicting the calls. He had been reading them. From a system that was always listening, always updating, always one step ahead of the people it was designed to assist. I submitted my resignation the following week. Paul accepted it without question, thanked me for my service, and processed my exit paperwork within an hour. The final incident report documenting my last shift was already complete when I logged in to retrieve my personal files. It listed my departure time as 1700 hours. I left at 1642. The system had updated itself before I had even finished leaving. I have not worked in emergency services since, but sometimes late at night I check the company's public dispatch log, a feature accessible to former employees for reference purposes. My call sign still appears. 842 Victor, running transports, completing reports, maintaining perfect protocol compliance. I have been gone for 9 months. The system has not noticed. Story 3. Time of death pending. The cardiac monitor refused to declare death. There was no heartbeat, no respiratory effort, no neurological response. Every clinical indicator confirmed what I already knew. But when I reached for the timestamp button, the screen displayed time of death pending. Each intervention I performed reset the clock. Medical control advised continuing resuscitation indefinitely. The protocol manual updated in real time, adding new procedures I had never seen before. The patient remained in a state the system would not allow me to call death. I had been an advanced life support paramedic for 11 years when I encountered the case. My career had been built on thousands of calls, hundreds of critical interventions, and more than a few moments where the boundary between life and death was decided by seconds and skill. I understood the physiology of dying. I understood the protocols. I understood when to fight and when to acknowledge the inevitable. This call defied all of that. It began as a standard cardiac arrest. Dispatch reported an unresponsive male, age 71, possible cardiac event, bystander CPR in progress. My partner, a paramedic named Nicole Rains, and I arrived on scene at 14:23 on a Tuesday afternoon. The address was a small duplex on the east side of town, older neighborhood, well-maintained properties. The patient was supine on the living room floor. A woman, presumably his wife, was performing chest compressions with reasonable technique. She stopped when we entered, stepped back, her face pale and streaked with tears. Nicole immediately took over compressions while I assessed. The patient was cyanotic, no pulse, no respirations, pupils fixed and dilated. I applied the cardiac monitor. The rhythm showed a systole, flatline, no electrical activity. I checked lead placement, confirmed proper contact. The reading remained unchanged. "How long has he been down?" I asked the wife. "I do not know," she said, her voice shaking. "I found him like this. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe longer." We initiated full resuscitation protocol. Nicole continued compressions. I established an intravenous line, administered epinephrine, prepared the airway. The monitor remained flatline. We ventilated, compressed, reassessed. No change. At 14:31, I contacted medical control. The physician on duty, Dr. Amanda Hurst, listened to my report and asked the standard questions: downtime, rhythm, interventions performed, response to treatment. "No response," I told her. "Asystole throughout, pupils non-reactive, no respiratory effort. There was a pause on the line. Then, continue resuscitation, transport emergent. I glanced at Nicole. She looked as surprised as I felt. The downtime was significant. The rhythm was non-shockable. The lack of response to epinephrine suggested the patient had been in arrest for longer than the wife estimated. "Dr. Hurst, are you advising transport?" I asked, seeking clarification. "Yes. Continue all interventions. Do not terminate on scene." It was unusual, but not unheard of. Sometimes medical control preferred to make the final determination in the emergency department, particularly if family was present. We loaded the patient, continued compressions during transport, and departed at 14:36. Nicole worked in the patient compartment, managing ventilations and compressions with the assistance of an automated CPR device we had deployed. I drove, monitoring updates through the partition. At 14:42, Nicole called out, "Still asystole, no change." I keyed the radio, updated medical control. Dr. Hurst acknowledged and repeated, "Continue resuscitation." We arrived at the hospital at 14:51. The emergency department staff met us at the bay, transferred the patient to their gurney, and continued interventions. I provided my report to the attending physician, Dr. Raymond Keller, a man I had worked with many times. He listened, reviewed the monitor strip I handed him, and nodded. "We will take it from here." Nicole and I restocked the ambulance and prepared to clear. Before we departed, I asked the charge nurse, a woman named Stephanie, if she could update me on the outcome when available. She said she would. We returned to service. 3 hours later, I received a call from Stephanie. Her voice sounded strained. "The patient from this afternoon," she said. "Dr. Keller wants to speak with you. Is there a problem? Just come back when you can." Nicole and I returned to the hospital during a gap between calls. Dr. Keller met us in the staff conference room. He looked tired, frustrated. "The patient is still in the resuscitation bay," he said. I blinked. "Still?" "We have been unable to declare death." Nicole and I exchanged glances. "I do not understand," I said. Dr. Keller gestured for us to follow him. We walked to the resuscitation bay. The patient was still on the gurney, still connected to the monitor, still receiving mechanical compressions from a device identical to ours. The monitor showed asystole. "We have been working him for over 3 hours," Dr. Keller said quietly. "No rhythm, no response. But the system will not allow me to call it." "What do you mean the system will not allow it?" Nicole asked. He pointed to the monitor. In the upper right corner, where the time of death would normally be entered and recorded, the screen displayed, "Time of death, pending." "I have tried to input the timestamp manually," Dr. Keller said. "It reverts to pending every time. I contacted IT. They said the system is functioning normally." I stared at the screen. "That does not make sense." "I know." He rubbed his eyes. "But every time I stop interventions, the system flags it as protocol non-compliance and automatically restarts the compressions." "Stop the device manually," I suggested. I did. The monitor alarmed, escalated the alert to the hospital administration, and I was instructed to continue resuscitation pending further review. Nicole stepped closer to the patient. "He has been down for hours. There is no viable outcome here." "I am aware," Dr. Keller said, "but the protocol manual has updated. Look." He handed me a tablet displaying the hospital's digital resuscitation guidelines. I scanned the text. The standard termination criteria: asystole persisting after 20 minutes of advanced interventions, no return of spontaneous circulation, discussion with medical control, were still present. But below them, a new section had appeared, highlighted in red. Extended resuscitation protocol, continuation required if time of death status remains unresolved. Consult updated intervention sequence. I scrolled down. The updated intervention sequence listed procedures I had never heard of. Algorithmic pulse verification, secondary cardiac rhythm confirmation, deep neurological assessment via non-standard monitoring. When was this added? I asked. Dr. Keller shook his head. I do not know. It was not there this morning. I checked the document's metadata. Last modified 1453, today's date, 2 minutes after we had arrived. I looked at Nicole. She was reading over my shoulder, her face pale. This is not standard, she whispered. Dr. Keller took the tablet back. I have contacted the medical director, the ethics committee, and the patient's family. No one can provide clear guidance. The family is asking me to stop. I want to stop, but the system will not let me document it. I approached the patient. His skin was mottled, lividity evident, body temperature dropping. Every physical indicator confirmed death, but the monitor continued its cycle. A systole, algorithmic prompt, automated compression, repeat. What happens if you disconnect him from the monitor? I asked. I tried. The device has a backup battery and wireless link. It continued operating independently. Nicole touched my arm. We need to leave. This is not our call anymore. She was right. We had delivered the patient. The hospital had assumed care. This was their situation to resolve. But as we turned to leave, the monitor emitted a tone I had never heard before. A soft, ascending chime. Dr. Keller looked at the screen. His expression changed. It is asking for additional intervention, he said slowly. What kind? I asked. He read from the screen. Secondary provider confirmation required. Paramedic credentialing detected. Requesting input from ALS personnel. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. It is asking for me? The screen updated. My name appeared. Paramedic David Morse. Credential verification confirmed. Input required. Nicole grabbed my shoulder. Do not touch it. But Dr. Keller was already holding the tablet out to me. It will not proceed without your confirmation. I did not take it. Confirmation of what? It wants you to verify continued resuscitation is warranted. I looked at the patient, at the monitor, at the screen displaying my name. I cannot verify that. He is deceased. Then input that, Dr. Keller said, his voice tight. Tell the system to stop. I hesitated. Then I took the tablet. The interface was simple. 2 options. Confirm continuation or request termination. I selected request termination. The screen flickered. Then, request denied. Clinical criteria unmet, continuation required. I stared at it. What clinical criteria? A new prompt appeared. Time of death cannot be confirmed without cessation of biological ambiguity. Proceed with extended protocol sequence. I handed the tablet back. I am not doing this. Dr. Keller did not argue. He set the tablet down, looked at the patient, and said quietly, Then we are at an impasse. Nicole and I left. In the ambulance, she said, What just happened? I do not know. We cleared back into service. The rest of the shift passed without incident. But I could not stop thinking about the patient. The monitor, the protocol that had updated itself. The next morning, I called the hospital. I asked for Dr. Keller. The operator transferred me to the emergency department. A different physician answered. Dr. Keller is not available. Can I help you? I am calling about a patient from yesterday. Cardiac arrest, extended resuscitation. There was a pause. Can you provide a name? I realized I did not know the patient's name. I had never asked. I do not have it. But Dr. Keller was the attending. The patient was in the resuscitation bay for several hours. Another pause. I do not see any record of that. Dr. Keller worked a standard shift yesterday, no extended cases logged. I felt the cold weight return. That is not possible. I was there. I spoke to him. I can leave him a message. Yes, please. I never received a call back. I checked our dispatch records. The call was logged. Cardiac arrest, 14:23, transport to hospital, patient delivered at 14:51, standard documentation. No anomalies. But there was no patient name. The field was blank. I asked Nicole if she remembered the wife's name, the address, any detail that could help me follow up. She looked at me, confused. What are you talking about? The cardiac arrest yesterday, the patient who would not die. Her confusion deepened. We ran a cardiac arrest yesterday? I pulled up the log, showed her. She read it, frowned. I do not remember this call. You were there. You performed compressions. We transported together. She shook her head slowly. David, I remember our shift. We ran a dialysis transfer, a fall injury, and a psychiatric transport. No cardiac arrest. I stared at her. She was not lying. She genuinely did not remember. I went home that night and reviewed my personal notes, a habit I had maintained throughout my career. I found the entry for the previous day. It was blank. I checked my phone. I had intended to photograph the monitor screen, a practice I sometimes used for unusual cases. No photos, but I remembered. I remembered the patient, the protocol update, the screen displaying my name. I called Dr. Keller's personal number, a contact I had saved years ago. The number was disconnected. I drove to the hospital, asked to speak to him in person. The staff said no one by that name worked there. I insisted, described him. The emergency department staff looked at me with concern and suggested I leave. I have not returned. But I still receive updates from the hospital's electronic system, automatic notifications sent to all paramedics in the network. Last week I received a protocol revision alert. The subject line, Extended Resuscitation Guidelines Pending Cases. The document listed one active case, patient name, unknown, paramedic of record David Morse, time of death pending, status ongoing. I do not open those emails anymore, but they keep coming. And somewhere I suspect a monitor is still running, a protocol still updating, a patient still waiting for permission to die. The system is very thorough. It does not forget. Story 4. The transfer call. The sending facility denied the patient ever existed. I stood in their records department with the transfer paperwork in my hand, signed by their attending physician, countersigned by their charge nurse, patient name and medical record number clearly printed. They searched their database 3 times. No match. But the receiving hospital had prepared a bed, assigned a room number and printed wristbands. The paperwork listed the transfer as internal, even though the facilities were 17 miles apart. The patient remained silent the entire drive, eyes open, watching me in the rearview mirror. I had worked as an interfacility transport paramedic for 6 years when this occurred. The job involved moving stable patients between hospitals, nursing homes, and specialized care centers. It was less acute than emergency response, more predictable, often tedious. But it paid consistently, and I preferred the routine. The call came through at 10:37 a.m. on a Friday. Dispatch informed me of a scheduled transfer from Riverside Medical Center to Lakewood Regional Hospital. The patient was a female, age 49, post-surgical observation, stable for transport. Standard bed-to-bed transfer, no advanced monitoring required. My partner that day was an EMT named Craig Odom, a younger man with about 2 years of experience. He handled the driving while I managed patient care. We arrived at Riverside Medical Center at 10:54 a.m. The facility was familiar to me. I had transported patients from there dozens of times. We checked in at the reception desk. provided our credentials, and waited for the floor nurse to bring the transfer paperwork. A nurse named Bethany approached us within 5 minutes. She handed me a clipboard with the standard forms: patient demographics, medical history, current medications, physician orders, and transfer authorization. The patient's name was listed as Iris Vey. Medical record number 793214A. Diagnosis: postoperative monitoring following an appendectomy. Vitals stable, no complications. Cleared for transfer to Lakewood Regional for continued recovery closer to her home. Everything appeared routine. Bethany led us to room 214. The patient was seated on the edge of the bed, dressed in street clothes, a small overnight bag beside her. She was pale, thin, with dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She did not speak when we entered. "Ms. Vey, these paramedics will be taking you to Lakewood," Bethany said gently. The patient nodded once but said nothing. "Does she need assistance walking?" I asked. "She is ambulatory," Bethany replied. "But she has been very quiet since admission. She understands everything, just does not talk much." I introduced myself and Craig, explained the process, and asked if she had any questions. She shook her head. We walked her to the gurney, secured her safely, and wheeled her to the ambulance. Bethany handed me the completed paperwork, wished us a safe transport, and returned inside. Craig began driving. I sat in the patient compartment, monitoring vitals as a precaution, though none were strictly required for this type of transfer. Iris Vey lay still, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. "Are you comfortable, Ms. Vey?" I asked. She did not respond. I checked her wristband, confirming it matched the paperwork. Name, medical record number, date of birth. All consistent. Approximately 8 minutes into the transport, I noticed her eyes had shifted. She was no longer looking at the ceiling. She was looking at me, not at my face. At the rearview mirror mounted above the patient compartment, angled so I could see Craig driving. Her gaze was fixed on the mirror, unblinking. "Ms. Vey, are you all right?" Still no response. I followed her line of sight. In the mirror, I could see Craig's hands on the wheel, the road ahead, the normal flow of traffic. Then I realized from her position on the gurney she could not see the mirror. The angle was wrong, but she was staring directly at it. I adjusted my position slightly, breaking her line of sight. Her eyes did not follow me. They remained fixed on the mirror. I felt a faint discomfort, though I could not articulate why. The rest of the transport proceeded without incident. We arrived at Lakewood Regional Hospital at 11:29 a.m. I radioed ahead, confirming our arrival. The receiving nurse met us at the entrance. Her name was Donna. She reviewed the paperwork I handed her, scanned the patient's wristband, and then frowned. "This says internal transfer," she said. I looked at the form. In the transfer type field, the box marked internal was checked. "That is incorrect," I said. "This is an interfacility transfer, Riverside to Lakewood." Donna shook her head. "Internal means within the same facility, but this patient is coming from Riverside, which is not affiliated with us." "I know. It must be a clerical error." She checked her computer. "We have a bed prepared for Iris Vey, room 409. But the system lists her as an internal transfer from our surgical wing." "She came from Riverside," I repeated. "I picked her up there an hour ago." Donna looked at the patient, then back at me. "Let me call the admissions office." She stepped away, spoke into a phone briefly, then returned. "They are saying the same thing, internal transfer, but our surgical wing has no record of discharging her." I pulled out my phone, called Riverside Medical Center, and asked to speak to the floor supervisor. A woman answered. I explained the situation. "I need to confirm a patient transfer. Iris Vey. Medical record number 793214A. Discharged from your facility approximately 1 hour ago. There was a pause. Keyboard sounds. I do not see that name in our system. I have the transfer paperwork in front of me. Signed by your attending physician and countersigned by your charge nurse, Bethany. More keyboard sounds. A longer pause. We do not have a nurse named Bethany on staff. I felt a slow, creeping unease. I spoke to her. She handed me the paperwork. Sir, I am looking at our discharge log for today. No patient named Iris Vey. No transfers to Lakewood Regional. I looked at Craig. He was listening, his expression tense. Can you search by medical record number? I asked. I read it to her. Another pause. That number does not exist in our system. I hung up. Donna was watching me. What did they say? They have no record of her. Donna's face paled slightly. She looked at Iris Vey, who remained silent, eyes open, staring upward. But we have a bed ready for her, Donna said quietly. Our system auto-generated the admission when the transfer was scheduled. Who scheduled it? She checked her computer. It does not say. It just appeared in the queue this morning. I looked at the paperwork again. The physician's signature was illegible, as most were. The nurse's signature, allegedly Bethany's, was equally unreadable. But the timestamps were clear. The forms had been completed at 10:41 a.m. I had arrived at Riverside at 10:54 a.m. The paperwork had been completed 13 minutes before I arrived. Where is your records department? I asked Donna. She directed me. I left Craig with the patient and walked to the records office. The clerk, a man named Stephen, listened to my explanation and searched the system. We have an Iris Vey admitted, he said. Room 409. But the transfer origin is listed as internal. Wing 3 South. Do you have a Wing 3 South? He shook his head. We only go up to Wing 2 West. I stared at him. Can you pull up her medical record? I asked. He typed, clicked, waited, then frowned. The record exists, but it is empty. No history, no diagnosis, no physician notes, just a name and a medical record number. How is that possible? It is not, he said flatly. Every admission requires baseline documentation. I returned to the entrance. Donna had wheeled Iris Vey inside into a hallway, waiting for instruction. I need to speak to your supervisor, I said. Donna nodded, made a call. Within minutes, a man in a suit arrived, introducing himself as Peter Carmichael, the hospital administrator. I explained everything. The transfer from Riverside, the denial of her existence, the internal transfer designation, the empty medical record. Peter listened carefully, then said, "Let me contact Riverside directly." He made the call, spoke to someone in their administration. The conversation was brief. He hung up, his expression unreadable. They confirmed they have no record of this patient. They suggested we verify the source of our transfer request. I picked her up from their facility, I insisted. Room 214. I spoke to a nurse. I have signed paperwork. Peter looked at the forms I handed him. He studied them closely. This letterhead is correct, he said. The physician's name listed here, Dr. Nathan Cross, does work at Riverside, but his signature does not match our records. He pulled out his phone, showed me an image of Dr. Cross's signature from a previous transfer. They were different. I felt the discomfort deepen into something colder. Peter looked at Iris Vey. Has she said anything? No. She has been silent since I picked her up. He approached her, spoke gently. Ms. Vey, can you tell me where you came from? She did not respond. Her eyes remained fixed upward. Peter checked her wristband, compared it to the paperwork. Everything matched. We will admit her, he said finally. We have a bed prepared. We will conduct a full assessment and determine next steps. I wanted to argue, to insist this was wrong, but I had no grounds. The patient was stable. The receiving hospital was accepting her. My job was complete. Craig and I transferred her to the hospital bed, completed the handoff, and left. In the ambulance, Craig said, "That was the strangest call I have ever run." I agreed. We returned to base, filed our report, and attached the transfer paperwork. I expected questions, follow-up, some kind of investigation. None came. A week later, I called Lakewood Regional, asked about Iris Vey. The operator searched. "We have no patient by that name. She was admitted last Friday, room 409. Room 409 is currently occupied by a different patient. Has been for 3 days." I asked to speak to Donna, the nurse who had received the patient. "We do not have a nurse named Donna." I hung up. I drove to Lakewood Regional in person, walked to room 409. A man in his 70s was lying in the bed watching television. I asked the floor nurse if she remembered a patient named Iris Vey admitted the previous week. She checked her records. No one by that name. I described the situation. She looked at me with concern. "Are you feeling all right?" I left. I checked my personal records. The call log was intact. Transfer from Riverside to Lakewood. Patient name Iris Vey. Completed without incident. But when I searched for the attached paperwork, the file was empty. I contacted dispatch, asked for a copy of the transfer authorization. They sent it. The fields were blank. No patient name, no medical record number, no facility names, just empty forms. Craig does not remember the call. When I asked him about it, he looked confused, said we had not run any transfers that day. I showed him the log. He shrugged. "System error, probably." I have stopped asking. But sometimes late at night I think about Iris Vey. About her silence, her unblinking stare, her fixation on a mirror she could not see. And I wonder if she was ever really there, or if I transported something else entirely, something the system accepted without question, something that leaves no trace except in the memory of a single paramedic who cannot prove it happened. The paperwork says internal transfer. Maybe it was. Maybe I never left the building at all. Story 5. High priority return. We were ordered back to a scene already cleared. Dispatch escalated the call to priority status despite my confirmation that we had completed patient contact and departed 20 minutes prior. The address no longer appeared on city maps when I searched for it. My GPS refused to calculate a route, yet dispatch continued to repeat the order. Tone calm, insistent. Return to scene. Patient awaiting transport. Response time was logged as 0 minutes. We arrived at a location that should not have existed. I had been a paramedic supervisor for 8 years when this occurred. My role involved overseeing field operations, coordinating with dispatch, and responding to high acuity calls that required senior clinical judgment. I was accustomed to unusual situations, system errors, communication breakdowns, but I had never encountered a dispatch order that contradicted observable reality. The initial call came at 13:41 on a Thursday afternoon. A medical alarm activation at a residential address, 472 Collier Lane. The reporting party was an automated monitoring system indicating a fall with possible injury. A standard unit responded, paramedics Jane Aldrich and Marcus Penn. I was monitoring radio traffic from my supervisor vehicle when they arrived on scene at 13:53. Jane's voice came through clearly. "On scene, single-story residence making contact." 3 minutes later, patient contact established, elderly male alert stable, minor abrasion refusing transport. Standard refusal protocol followed. Jane documented the patient's decision, obtained a signature, and cleared the scene at 14:09. I noted the call closure and moved on to other tasks. At 14:27, my radio activated. Dispatch, a woman named Kelly Frost, spoke in her usual calm, measured tone. Supervisor 9, please respond priority to 472 Collier Lane. Patient awaiting transport. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, that address was cleared 18 minutes ago. Patient refused transport. A pause. Then, Supervisor 9, respond priority. Patient status critical. I frowned. Dispatch, confirm you are referring to 472 Collier Lane. Affirmative. I checked the call log on my mobile data terminal. The call was listed as closed, refusal documented, unit cleared and available. Dispatch, the call is closed in the system, Unit 4 already cleared. Another pause, longer this time. Supervisor 9, disregard prior closure, respond immediately, patient requires advanced life support. I felt a flicker of unease. It was possible the patient had changed his mind after the crew left, called back for assistance. But the escalation from refusal to critical status within 18 minutes was unusual. Dispatch, has there been a second call from that address? Negative. This is a continuation of the original call. That made no sense. A continuation implied the call had never closed, but I had heard Jane clear the scene myself. Dispatch, I need clarification. Did the patient call back? Negative. Patient has not called. Respond priority. I glanced at the address on my screen. 472 Collier Lane. I inputted into my GPS. No results found. I tried again, manually typing the street name. The GPS offered Collier Avenue, Collier Court, Collier Drive. No Collier Lane. I keyed the radio. Dispatch, my GPS is not recognizing the address. Can you confirm the cross streets? Stand by. I waited. The radio remained silent for nearly a minute. Then, Supervisor 9, cross streets unavailable. Respond using prior routing. I do not have prior routing. I was not on the original call. Understood. Respond immediately. Time is critical. I pulled up the city map on my tablet, searched for Collier Lane. Nothing. I expanded the search to neighboring districts. Still nothing. I called Jane Aldrich directly on her cell phone. Jane, I need you to confirm the address of your last call. 472 Collier Lane, she said. Why? Dispatch is ordering me back there. They are saying the patient is critical. She sounded confused. That does not make sense. He was stable. He refused. We documented everything. Can you navigate me there? My GPS is not finding it. Sure. It is off Bridgewater Road, about 2 miles north of the rail crossing. Small white house, chain link fence. I knew Bridgewater Road. I drove there frequently, but I had never seen a Collier Lane. I am heading there now, I said. Stand by in case I need you to respond as well. I drove north on Bridgewater Road, watching for any turnoff that might lead to Collier Lane. The area was semi-rural, a mix of older homes and undeveloped lots. I passed the rail crossing, continued north. No Collier Lane. I slowed, scanning both sides of the road. Nothing. My radio activated again. Supervisor 9, confirm estimated time of arrival. I stopped the vehicle. Dispatch, I am on Bridgewater Road. There is no Collier Lane here. Supervisor 9, you are showing on scene. I looked at my mobile data terminal. The GPS icon indicated my position as 472 Collier Lane. But I was parked on Bridgewater Road in front of an empty field. Dispatch, my GPS is incorrect. I am not on scene. Understood. Response time logged as 0 minutes. Proceed with patient contact. I stepped out of the vehicle, looked around. There was no house, no chain link fence, no patient. Just an overgrown field and a rusted mailbox leaning at an angle. I walked toward the mailbox. The numbers were faded but visible. 472. There was no house. I keyed the radio. Dispatch, there is no structure at this location, only an empty lot. Supervisor 9, confirm patient contact. There is no patient, there is no building. A long pause. Supervisor 9, remain on scene. Additional unit dispatched for assistance. I waited. Within minutes, I saw an ambulance approaching from the south. Unit 4. Jane and Marcus. They parked beside me. Jane stepped out, looked around, her expression bewildered. "This is not where we were," she said. "What do you mean?" "The house we responded to was not here. It was right off Bridgewater, but further east, near the old grain silo." I knew the area she meant. It was at least a mile away. "Show me," I said. We drove together, following her directions. She led me to a different section of Bridgewater Road near an abandoned grain silo. She pointed to a small white house with a chain-link fence. "There," she said. I checked the mailbox. The number read 219. "This is not 472, I said. Jane stared at the number, then at the house. "But this is where we were, I am sure of it." Marcus, standing beside her, nodded slowly. "Yeah, this is the place." I walked to the front door, knocked, no answer. I peered through the window. The interior was empty, furniture covered in dust sheets. Jane checked her mobile data terminal, pulled up the call log. The address listed 472 Collier Lane, but we were standing at 219 Bridgewater Road. I called dispatch. "Kelly, I need you to verify the original call address. 472 Collier Lane. Can you provide the latitude and longitude?" She read off coordinates. I input them into my GPS. The location pin appeared in the middle of the empty field where I had been standing minutes earlier. "Kelly, those coordinates do not match any structure." "Understood. Do you have patient contact?" "There is no patient." "Supervisor 9, please confirm patient status." I felt a rising frustration. There is no patient because there is no location. The address does not exist. Silence. Then, in the same calm tone, "Supervisor 9, patient status logged as stable. Transport not required. You are clear to return to service." I looked at Jane. She was pale. "Did she just close the call?" Jane whispered. I checked my terminal. The call status had updated. "Patient contact completed. No transport. Unit cleared." But I had not made patient contact. I had not found a patient. I keyed the radio. "Dispatch, I need to speak to a supervisor." "Supervisor 9, you are the on-duty field supervisor." "I need to speak to a dispatch supervisor." "Stand by." I waited. A different voice came on, male, older. "This is dispatch supervisor Carl Bennett. What is the issue?" I explained the situation. The conflicting addresses, the non-existent location, the automatic call closure despite no patient contact. Carl listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "I am looking at the log now. Everything appears correct. Initial call, patient refusal, follow-up response, patient stable, call closed. But I never found a patient. Your GPS shows you on scene. Response time is logged. The system recorded your status updates. I did not make those updates." A pause. "The system indicates otherwise." I felt a cold clarity settle over me. "Carl, I am telling you, I did not find a patient. The address does not exist." "Understood. I will flag this for review. You are clear to return to service." The radio went silent. Jane looked at me. What just happened? I did not answer because I did not know. We returned to the station. I filed a detailed incident report noting every discrepancy, every impossibility. I attached screenshots of the GPS errors, the conflicting addresses, the automatic status updates. The report was submitted at 16:22. At 16:23, I received an automated email. Incident report reviewed and closed. No further action required. 1 minute. I called Carl Bennett directly. Carl, my report was closed immediately. There was no investigation. The system reviewed it. No anomalies detected. The system is wrong. The system is functioning normally. I hung up. Over the following days, I checked the dispatch logs repeatedly. The call to 472 Collier Lane appeared in every record, documented as a routine response with successful patient contact and resolution. But when I searched for Collier Lane in city planning records, property tax databases, and postal listings, nothing existed. I drove back to the empty field. The mailbox was gone. I asked Jane and Marcus if they remembered the call. Jane said, "Which call?" I described it. She looked at me blankly. "I do not remember responding to Collier Lane." I showed her the log. Her name was listed as the responding paramedic. She read it, frowned. "I must have forgotten. We run a lot of calls." Marcus said the same thing. I checked my own memory, tried to reconstruct the details. The more I focused, the less certain I became. Had I really driven to an empty field? Had the mailbox ever been there? I stopped checking. Last month, I received a commendation from the department for exemplary response time on a high-priority call. The citation referenced 472 Collier Lane, noting my 0-minute response time as a model of efficiency. I did not attend the ceremony, but I kept the certificate, because sometimes I wonder if I did find the patient. If I completed the call exactly as the system recorded, and the only error is my memory insisting something was wrong when everything, according to the data, went perfectly. The system does not lie. It simply updates, and we follow. Story 6. The ambulance that wouldn't power down. After shift end, the ambulance remained active. I had completed the shutdown checklist, turned the key to the off position, and removed it from the ignition. But the monitors continued cycling through patient IDs unassigned to us, names I did not recognize, vitals updating in real time. The engine started itself 3 times. Each time I silenced it, it restarted within minutes. The radio repeated my name softly, persistently, as if testing the sound. Dispatch claimed the unit was offline, but the dashboard showed otherwise. I had been working night shifts as a paramedic for 7 years when this began. The hours were taxing, the calls often grim, but I had adapted. Night work offered a strange calm between emergencies, a rhythm of darkness and headlights and the hum of medical equipment. I had learned to trust the machinery, the ambulances that became second homes during 12-hour shifts, until one refused to sleep. The shift had been unremarkable. My partner, a paramedic named Laura Finch, and I had run 6 calls. 2 transports, 3 refusals, 1 psychiatric hold. We returned to the station at 0614 just before shift end. Standard procedure required us to restock the ambulance, complete the vehicle inspection checklist, and power down all systems before turning the unit over to the day crew. Laura handled the restocking while I worked through the checklist. I verified fuel levels, checked tire pressure, confirmed all equipment was secure. At 0632, I turned the ignition key to the off position and removed it. The dashboard went dark. I stepped out, locked the cab, and joined Laura in the equipment bay. We finished restocking by 0641, logged the completion in the station's digital system, and prepared to head home. As I walked toward my car, I heard the ambulance engine start. I stopped, turned. The vehicle was running, headlights on, dashboard illuminated. Laura heard it too. "Did you leave the key in?" I held up the key. "No." We walked back. I opened the cab door. The ignition was in the on position, though I had clearly turned it off and removed the key. "Maybe it is a mechanical issue," Laura suggested. "Faulty ignition switch." I turned the engine off again, jiggled the key to ensure it was firmly in the off position, and removed it. The engine stopped. The lights went dark. "I will report it to maintenance," I said. We waited a moment. The ambulance remained silent. Satisfied, we left. I was halfway across the parking lot when the engine started again. I looked back. The headlights were on. The vehicle was running. Laura muttered something under her breath and walked back with me. This time I checked the engine compartment, looking for any obvious electrical fault. Everything appeared normal. I shut the engine down again, this time disconnecting the battery. The engine stopped. "That should do it," I said. We returned to our cars. Behind us, the radio in the ambulance activated. I heard my name, faint but distinct through the closed windows. "David," I froze. Laura looked at me. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." We approached the vehicle again. The radio was off. The battery was disconnected, but the voice had been clear. I opened the door, checked the radio unit. It was powered down, no indicator lights, no static. "Maybe it was from another unit," Laura offered, though her voice lacked conviction. The station had 4 ambulances. The others were parked nearby, all dark, all silent. I closed the door and stepped back. The voice came again from inside the cab. "David," Laura grabbed my arm. "We need to report this." I agreed. We went inside, found the night supervisor, a man named Gordon Mills. He listened to our account with a skeptical expression, but agreed to investigate. He walked out to the ambulance with us. The vehicle was silent, dark, battery still disconnected. "Show me," he said. I reconnected the battery. The dashboard powered up normally. I turned the ignition off, removed the key. The system shut down as expected. Gordon waited. Nothing happened. "It was malfunctioning," I said. "Starting on its own. The radio was activating." He checked the ignition, the radio, the electrical panel. "Everything looks fine. Probably a short. I will have maintenance check it in the morning." He walked back inside. Laura and I stood by the vehicle, uncertain. "Let us just go," she said. "It is not our problem anymore." I wanted to agree, but something felt unfinished. I checked the monitors in the patient compartment. They were powered down, screens black. Then, as I watched, one activated. The screen illuminated, displaying a patient vital signs interface. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, all updating in real time. But there was no patient connected. I checked the leads. They were coiled neatly on the mount, unattached. The monitor continued displaying vitals. I read the patient ID at the top of the screen. Patient L. Terrell, age 57, status stable. I did not recognize the name. I checked our call log. No one named L. Terrell had been transported during our shift. I powered the monitor down manually. The screen went black. Then it reactivated, displaying a different patient. Patient R. Gaines, age 41, status critical. Laura leaned in, her face pale. "What is happening?" I powered it down again. It reactivated within seconds. Patient M. Holloway, age 63, status deceased. I stared at the word. Deceased. The monitor continued cycling. New names, new vitals, some stable, some critical, some deceased, none of them ours. I disconnected the monitor's power cable. The screen remained lit. I checked the backup battery compartment. It was empty. The monitor should not have been operational, but it was. Laura backed away. "I am leaving. You should too." I wanted to, but I needed to understand. I opened the equipment lockers, checked the drug boxes, the oxygen tanks, the airway kits. Everything was in order. Then I noticed the logbook. Every ambulance maintained a physical logbook, a backup record of calls and equipment checks. It was rarely used, mostly redundant given the digital systems, but protocol required it. I opened it. The last entry was mine from earlier that night, documenting the final call. But below it, new entries had appeared. Handwritten entries in handwriting I did not recognize. 0651 Patient L. Terrell loaded, en route to County Memorial. 0703 Patient R. Gaines, cardiac arrest, resuscitation in progress. 0718 Patient M. Holloway, time of death called. The entries continued, filling the page, timestamps advancing in real time. I checked my watch. 0654. The entry timestamp read 0654. The logbook was updating itself. I closed it, set it down, the radio activated. David, I did not respond. David, confirm patient count. I looked at the radio. The screen displayed my call sign, active, transmitting. But I had not keyed the mic. David, respond. I grabbed the radio, held down the transmit button. This is David. Who is this? Static. Then, confirm patient count. There are no patients. The shift is over. Negative. Multiple patients logged, require transport. I checked the patient compartment. It was empty. There are no patients, I repeated. Confirm visual. I looked around. The compartment was empty. The gurney was folded, unoccupied. Then I saw the straps. They were fastened, secured across the gurney as if restraining someone. But the gurney was empty. I reached out, unbuckled the straps. They refastened themselves. I stepped back. The radio spoke again. Patient secured. Proceed to destination. What destination? I asked, my voice tight. The GPS screen in the cab activated. A route appeared, plotted to an address I did not recognize. I walked to the cab, checked the screen. Destination, 441 Ashford Lane. Patient, D. Morse. Status, pending. My name. The engine started. I had not turned the key. The vehicle began rolling forward slowly, as if someone were pressing the accelerator. I lunged for the brake, pressed it down. The vehicle stopped, but the engine continued running. I turned the key to off. The engine did not stop. I removed the key. The engine continued. I disconnected the battery again. The engine ran. Laura was gone. I was alone in the bay. The radio repeated, proceed to destination. I opened the door, stepped out, backed away from the vehicle. The headlights turned toward me, tracking my movement. I ran inside, found Gordon. The ambulance is operational, I said, my voice shaking. I cannot shut it down. He looked at me, annoyed. You just told me it was malfunctioning. It is, but it will not stop. He followed me outside. The ambulance was dark, engine off, silent. Gordon walked around it, checked the ignition, the battery connection. It is off, he said flatly. I stared at the vehicle. It sat inert, lifeless. It was running, I insisted. David, go home. You have been on shift for 12 hours. You are exhausted. I wanted to argue, but the ambulance offered no evidence. I left. At home, I tried to sleep. I could not. At 0920, my phone rang. The station. Gordon's voice. David, did you take the ambulance? What? Unit 7 is missing. GPS shows it is at your home address. I looked out the window. The ambulance was parked in my driveway. I had not driven it there. I went outside, approached the vehicle. The engine was off, the cab empty, but the patient compartment door was open. Inside, the monitor was active. Patient D. Morse. Age 34, status in transit. I called Gordon back. It is here. I do not know how. Drive it back, now. I ended the call. I climbed into the cab. The key was in the ignition. I turned it. The engine started normally. The GPS displayed a route. Back to the station. I drove. The route was correct. Familiar streets, normal traffic. But the monitor in the back continued updating. Patient D. Morse, vitals stable. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The gurney was no longer empty. Someone was lying there. I slammed the brakes, pulled over, ran to the back. The gurney was empty. I returned to the cab, hands trembling, and continued driving. At the station, I parked the ambulance, left the key in the ignition, and walked inside. Gordon was waiting. "What the hell happened?" "I do not know." He checked the vehicle. Everything was normal. I submitted my resignation that day. Gordon accepted it without question. But sometimes, late at night, I checked the department's GPS tracking system, a public-facing feature that shows active unit locations. Unit 7 still appears. Driving routes I recognize. Transporting a patient named D. Morse. Status: in transit. I have been gone for 4 months. The ambulance has not stopped. Story 7, end of shift, end of record. At midnight, all reports finalized automatically. I had been documenting a call, still typing, when the system locked me out and marked it complete. I reviewed the entry. It was thorough, accurate, written in my style, but I had not finished it. Then I found the other report. Incident number 68397, patient name David Morse. My name. The vitals were listed as improving. My trainee, a woman I had worked with for 3 months, did not remember my name. When I asked her directly, she looked confused and called me Sir. I had been a senior paramedic and field trainer for 13 years when this occurred. My role involved mentoring newly certified paramedics, evaluating their clinical skills and ensuring they could operate independently before full clearance. It was demanding work, requiring patience and attention to detail, but I found it rewarding. I had trained dozens of paramedics over the years, many of whom had gone on to leadership roles within the department. My current trainee was a woman named Rebecca Collier, a recent graduate with strong academic scores but limited field experience. She had been assigned to me 6 weeks prior, and we had developed a functional working relationship. She was meticulous, cautious, sometimes overly hesitant, but competent. The shift in question was a Tuesday night, my usual rotation. Rebecca and I began at 1800 hours, running a series of routine calls: a diabetic emergency, a minor vehicle accident, a fall with possible fracture, standard training scenarios. Rebecca performed well, and I documented her progress in the digital evaluation system after each call. By 23:30, we had returned to the station. One call remained to be documented, a transport we had completed at 22:14. I began entering the details into the incident reporting system while Rebecca restocked the ambulance. The report was straightforward: patient name, medical history, vitals, interventions, transport time, receiving facility. I worked methodically, ensuring accuracy for both the patient record and Rebecca's training file. At 23:57, the system froze. I assumed it was a temporary lag, common with the older software the department used. I waited. At midnight exactly, the screen refreshed. The report I had been writing was marked complete. I frowned. I had not finished. Several fields remained blank, and I had not submitted the form. I opened the report to continue editing. Every field was filled. The narrative section, which I had left incomplete, now contained a full, detailed account of the call. It was written in my style, using phrasing I would use, structuring the information as I typically did. But I had not written it. I checked the timestamp. The report was marked as submitted at 0000 hours. Midnight. I had been in the middle of typing when the clock struck 12. I reviewed the content carefully. It was accurate. Nothing was incorrect or fabricated. It simply existed when it should not have. I logged out, assuming a software glitch had autofilled based on templates or previous entries. I made a mental note to mention it to IT in the morning. Then I noticed the notification icon in the corner of the screen. A new incident report had been assigned to me for review. I clicked it. Incident number 68397, patient name, David Morse. I stared at my name on the screen. The report listed details: age 34, male, paramedic, found unresponsive at station. Vitals initially unstable, improved following intervention. I read it twice. It was describing me. But I was not unresponsive. I was sitting at the desk, fully conscious, actively using the system. I checked the timestamp. The report was filed at 23:41, 19 minutes earlier. I scrolled through the narrative. Patient found seated at workstation, non-responsive to verbal stimuli. Skin pale, diaphoretic. Pupils equal and reactive. Respirations shallow. Pulse weak, irregular. Patient placed on monitoring. IV established. Vitals improving. Patient remains altered, unaware of surroundings. Transport not required. Continued observation recommended. I read the signature line. Reporting paramedic, Rebecca Collier. I stood, walked into the equipment bay where Rebecca was finishing the restocking. She looked up as I approached. Rebecca, did you file a report about me? She looked confused. A report? An incident report listing me as a patient. Her confusion deepened. No. Why would I do that? I pulled up the report on my phone, showed her the screen. She read it, her expression shifting from confusion to unease. I did not write this, she said. Your name is on it. I know, but I did not write it. I checked the login history. The report had been filed from her user account at 23:41. Were you logged into the system at that time? I asked. She thought for a moment. No. I was restocking. I have not touched the computer since we got back. I returned to the desk, checked the activity log. Her account showed continuous activity. Reports filed, forms completed, evaluations submitted, all while she had been in the equipment bay. I called her over, showed her. She stared at the screen. That is not possible. I have been working on the ambulance. I opened one of the reports attributed to her. It was detailed, thorough, accurate, written in her style. Did you write this? I asked, pointing to a transport report from earlier in the shift. She read it. Yes, I wrote that one, but I wrote it hours ago, right after the call. I checked the timestamp. It was filed at 0000 hours, midnight, just like mine. Rebecca, all the reports are being finalized at midnight, automatically. She looked at me. Is that normal? No. I checked the other paramedics' reports, accessing the department-wide log. Every report filed that night by every crew had been finalized at exactly midnight. Hundreds of reports, all completed simultaneously. I called the dispatch supervisor, a woman named Lynn Harper. Lynn, are you seeing any system issues tonight? Reports auto-finalizing? She checked. No, everything looks normal. Why? All the reports are being completed at midnight, even if the paramedic has not finished them. That is part of the new system update. End of shift auto-finalization. It was implemented last week. I paused. I was not informed of this. It was in the department-wide email, sent on Friday. I checked my email. There it was, dated Friday, subject line. System update, auto-finalization protocol. I had no memory of reading it. I opened it. The message explained that all incident reports would auto-complete at the end of each shift, using AI-assisted documentation to ensure timely filing and reduce administrative burden. Why was I not consulted about this? I asked. You were. You signed the acknowledgement form. I did not sign anything. Lynn sounded impatient. David, I am looking at it right now. Your digital signature dated last Wednesday. I hung up, opened the acknowledgement log. There it was. My name, my signature, my consent. I had not signed it, but the system said I had. I looked at Rebecca. She was watching me, her face pale. What is going on? She asked quietly. I do not know. I returned to the report listing me as a patient. I read it again, searching for any detail that might explain its existence. Then I noticed the vitals: heart rate, 62, blood pressure, 118/76, oxygen saturation, 97%. I checked my watch. It had a basic fitness tracker. I glanced at the current readings. Heart rate, 62. Blood pressure, 118/76. Oxygen saturation, 97%. Exact match. The report was tracking me in real time. I opened the report again, watched the vitals field. The numbers updated. Heart rate, 64. I checked my watch. 64. Rebecca leaned over my shoulder, saw the screen. That is live data. Yes. But you are not connected to any monitor. I looked down at myself. No leads, no sensors, no equipment. Yet the system was tracking me. I closed the report, stood and walked outside. I needed air, distance, clarity. Rebecca followed. In the parking lot, I turned to her. How long have we been working together? She hesitated. A few weeks. How many? I am not sure. Maybe 6? What is my name? She looked at me, her expression uncertain. I do not know. I felt a cold, hollow sensation in my chest. You have been calling me by my name all night. I have been calling you sir. No. You have used my name, David. She shook her head slowly. I do not think I have. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recording app and played back a section from earlier in the shift. Her voice, clearly audible. David, should I check the airway again? She listened, her face blank. That is not me, she said. It is your voice. I do not remember saying that. I played another clip, same result. She did not recognize her own words. I checked my training logs, the digital evaluations I had been filing on her performance. The most recent entry was dated 4 days ago, but we had worked together every night this week. I opened the personnel directory, searched for my name, David Morse, paramedic. Status, inactive. I stared at the word, inactive. I checked the details. Last shift logged 6 months ago. But I had been working continuously. I had just completed a shift an hour ago. I called Lynn Harper again. Lynn, why does my personnel file say inactive? A pause. You are on extended leave, David. Medical leave. I am not on leave. I am standing in the station parking lot right now. David, you have not been on duty for 6 months. That is not true. I just worked a full shift. I transported patients. I filed reports. I do not see any activity under your name. I opened the incident log, filtered by my user ID. No results. That is impossible, I whispered. Lynn's voice softened. David, are you all right? Do you need someone to come check on you? I hung up. Rebecca was staring at me. What is your name? I asked her. Rebecca Collier. What is my name? She hesitated, then quietly, I do not know. I walked back inside, sat at the desk, and opened the report listing me as a patient. The vitals were still updating. Status, improving. Observation, patient remains unaware. Continued monitoring required. Recommendation, no transport. Subject stable within current environment. I read the final line. Prognosis, integration ongoing. I do not remember leaving the station that night, but I remember waking up at home fully dressed, my uniform still on, the taste of coffee I did not recall drinking. I have not returned to the station, but I still receive the automated shift reminders, the schedule updates, the department emails. They arrive on time every week, listing my shifts, my assignments, my trainees. I check the personnel directory sometimes. My status remains inactive, but the reports keep filing, incident after incident, patient after patient, all signed with my name, all completed at midnight. And somewhere in a report I can no longer access, my vitals continue improving. My integration ongoing. The system has not forgotten me. It is simply waiting for me to remember where I belong.